And we're live.
We are live. Good evening, everyone. We are 5 minutes away from the broadcast, and we're getting ready here as we shared with our friends and family on Facebook, on Twitch, on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it at this point, Facebook, YouTube, and all of the above. We're making up for our postponed broadcast from last night that we didn't get to. But we've got news and notes from the NFL. We've got spotlight on 4 teams tonight. So stick with us, and we'll be right back in 4 minutes and 31 seconds.
What's up, everybody? Excuse me. How's everybody doing? You ready to talk some football?
Oh, my kids.
What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing?
Yeah, my kids came in and interrupted me in the middle of me sharing everything, so I had to kind of start over. But we're here. How are you?
I'm doing good. A lot of news in the football world, boys and girls.
Yeah, go right ahead and start us off if you'd like.
So, breaking news. Brandon Ayuk demands a trade. 49ers say they're not interested in trading him. So how is this going to play out? Is he going to sit out, refuse to play? Is he going to play underneath the tag? What's the deal?
Well, I can tell you what I think. First of all, the words that they used were no intention to trade. Okay? There's no intention to trade, which means if you don't come with a really good offer, we're not going to trade him. And he is under contract. There's plenty of time between now and the actual beginning of the regular season. And so I think that, if he wants to hold in or hold out, and let me explain that to our viewers. If you hold out, that means you don't report to training camp, you're not there, and they have the right to fine you for not showing up and doing what you're supposed to do. It's part of your job to be there. Holding in means that you are there, but you refuse to participate in practices or, any type of tests or preseason games or any of that such stuff, to the point where they're not preseason game. They can't really fine you, but what they can do is not give you any playing time, sit you on the bench, because or whatever. I mean, the door swings both ways. And so, the talk that I've heard is that it's more likely that he will either decide to play out this season, knowing that he's going to be a free agent, coming up, and they'll have to franchise tag either him or their quarterback. And it's the quarterback, Brock Purdy, that is, basically causing this to be a problem. If they knew that they didn't have to pay Brock Purdy quarterback starting money beginning next year, Brandon Ayuk would probably already be paid. He's a dynamic, good player. He's their leading receiver. And, he's the kind of player that they do want on their team. And they are Super Bowl ready now. They were there last year, and there's a good chance they can make it again this year. But if he decides that he doesn't want to play, I think that either someone will come along and make a significant offer, or the alternative will be they trade Deebo Samuel and then sign Brandon Ayuk to a big contract, because they're not going to be able to keep both of them long-term on a big deal and still pay George Kittle a big deal. They have the highest paid tight end, the highest paid left tackle, the highest paid pass rusher, everybody's the highest paid in the league on their team, okay, except for the quarterback, okay, and now the wide receivers also, okay, but they can't afford everybody, and they're going to have to pay Brock Purdy beginning this next season, and that's where paying Brandon Ayuk $30 million a year, like all these other quarterbacks have been, or wide receivers have been getting over the last several months, is a problem, Chris.
Yep. And it's just getting crazier because more the cap goes up, more of these quarterbacks and other high-end positions that can get paid, they just ask for more money and then they get it. And it just hurts these other positions like running back and receivers. In other news, drama in Green Bay's, Foreman. You got Jordan Love sitting in as well, saying he's not going to practice until he gets a new contract. He did sign an extension last season, a team-friendly deal, but after last year, he thinks he deserves a whole brand new contract that pays a lot more money. Now, I don't know how much I agree. I think this is kind of ballsy on Love. Not saying that he's not going to be a good quarterback, because I do see it. He did have a strong year last year. Took the Packers to the playoffs, beat the Cowboys. So he has put some stuff on the table that Green Bay really has to consider here. Going into training camp and preseason, getting ready for the season. But it's also 1 year as a starter. We've seen guys come in and have a hell of a first season. Looked like they could be something and then just vanish. So to me, you're kind of biting your hand that's feeding you right now with being this ballsy after one decent year. What's his name? Coleman on ESPN. He said he was better than Mahomes from week 10 and above, and said all this crazy stuff, which he put up good numbers, but the whole point is he was nowhere close to the numbers. He was close, but to me, he wasn't in the bracket of Mahomes, Goff, Prudy, and Lamar, and all the other quarterbacks, top quarterbacks in the league last season.
He has 10 wins as a starter, including a playoff victory on the road. Okay, and so but part of this is the fault of the organization, because they've had him on the roster for so long without him getting an opportunity to get on the field, because they had Aaron Rodgers, and so he gets his first year and he delivered. And they knew prior to last year that, he was going to be asking for money sooner rather than later. They gave him a raise going into last year to be the starter. But it's just, like a 2-year deal. It was last year and this year. Now he's played a season. And so, yes, they've got good wide receivers. They've got a good offensive line. And we are going to talk about the Green Bay Packers as a team as a whole very soon here. But what you have is a guy that demonstrated as the season wore on, he got better and better. It's the same system. It's the same coaches. It's the same, playmakers around him for the most part. And he showed that he is a franchise quarterback after one season. And so I think that, now he is the established starter. So he's getting all the first team reps in the offseason and in training camp. They'll go through as the starter from the very get-go here without any question as the leader on the team. He's got the right kind of personality and mentality when it comes to being, the face of the franchise at this point. And so I think that he is in his every right to request that he wants starting caliber quarterback money. Now, they'll, of course, have to go to the negotiating table, and they will go back and forth. I'm not saying he's going to get $50 million a year, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was north of 45. It may be a short-term contract in the beginning just to, kind of hedge their bets a little bit, maybe a 3-year deal. But if they're certain about his abilities after the first year, if they are damn certain it'll be a 5-year contract, $250 million, And
I definitely agree.
It'll all come down to how much of the money is the signing bonus, how much of the money is the guarantees. Brian Gutekunst, the general manager of the Packers, said today that the deal is just a few days away from being done. So, they have the parameters of a deal in place. They're just going through and crossing their T's and dotting their I's.
Yeah, because I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he don't deserve the money. Wasn't mean that. I just mean ballsy because my opinion is, wouldn't you at this point just bet on yourself, give him one more year, play your ass off, you do it again, you're going to get way more than probably a 5-year contract. You might get a 6-year contract and even more money on top of it.
That's not what they want. They want to have in fact, I won't be surprised at all if it turns into a 3-year deal, because the faster they can get to the next contract gives them more guaranteed money, more signing bonus money. The cap's going up every year. We've got Christmas on Netflix, and we're playing in Brazil, and we've got all these, other shows that are bringing in money. Receiver on Netflix. They're going to have maybe a defensive show next year. Maybe they'll go back to quarterbacks. Maybe they'll do running backs. But you've got all these different shows, these networks that are paying money to the NFL to show off their products. And with that comes a higher, salary cap figure. It increases, the ability for teams to pay even more money out. A prime example, and we'll switch gears to a different sport. The WNBA just signed a $2.2 billion television deal, okay? Even though nobody's really watching it with that kind of zest, it allows them to double and triple the salaries of almost every player in that league, thanks to the Angel Reeses, the Caitlin Clarks of the world that are starting to really draw eyes to that league. And so the same type of things happen in the NFL. You've got Fox has a package, Amazon's got a package, CBS, NBC, ESPN, ABC has a package. Now you've got Netflix is going to have a package of stuff, okay? You're going to have where maybe Max gets involved, okay? Maybe you get, Hulu, you'll start having stuff on Hulu. We already got Peacock, okay, which is associated with NBC. So, now you'll get Hulu, which is associated with ESPN and ABC. That'll be the next one, okay? They'll have something on there, because you've got Nickelodeon and so that's Paramount Plus is associated with CBS. And so everybody's going to get there. They're going to spend more money to show it online, to show it on, the streaming services. They'll still have their free over-the-air shows because you get all that extra advertising money from those locations. That's where, a lot of that money comes in. But with the salary cap going up, they'll just continue to deal out higher and higher salaries as we go forward. There's no end in sight when it comes to, the players, the owners, the franchises, everything being worth more and making more.
Yep. Also, I just want to go break this down. I've seen a few people come and talking about the receiver broadcast, saying the Lions are going to get in trouble. They possibly get in trouble because they didn't report St. Brown's injury, da-da-da. Well, if people will do some little bit of research, just like I did, I've seen people talking about it, but then I seen an article about it. Well, I looked up injury report from Week 4, 2023 season, which was Green Bay, Thursday Night Football. He was on limited practice on the injury report, meaning he was dealing with the injury. Meaning,
he sat out that game. It's the games that he played in. If he wasn't listed on the injury report, knowing that he was injured.
Yeah, he played Week 4. He sat Week 5. So going into week 4, he was limited to practice all that week. And then an article saying that he could face suspension because he mentioned they gave him painkillers before the game. I don't know where anybody's been. These players have been
painkillers every time there's a football game.
Exactly. I mean, the reason why Brett Favre always played to all those injuries later in a good portion of his career was because he got addicted to taking pain pills and playing with injuries. So he quit, and he had to deal with the pain 100% sober because of his addiction. This has been going on for years. Now I think they do it a little bit better so players are not getting addicted, and they monitor it a lot better than they did in years prior. But nothing the Lions did is going to cost them because, one, he showed up on the injury report in week 4. He set out week 5 with injury, so he was already on the injury report for week 5 because he didn't play. And
here's a prime example, okay, of why this is stupid. Anybody that said that he was going to get in trouble for taking painkillers before the game. Do you remember how Justin Herbert got his first start?
Yeah, because they stabbed what's his name in the lungs.
Yeah, he was taking a cortisone shot for rib cartilage that was ripped or something, and he got poked in the lung on accident, and that meant that he couldn't play. And so Herbert came in and played great against the Chiefs in his very first game, nearly won the game out in L.A., okay? And so, taking a cortisone shot or getting on painkillers before a game starts is nothing new in this league, okay? That's why in the offseason, and that they have limited testing now for THC and marijuana in the league as negotiated by, the Players Association in the last CBA, is because that helps relieve stress and pain, in the players.
To me, marijuana should have been legal for years for the league. You know what I mean? And just because, these players make millions of dollars, and I get it's an image thing, but at the same time, it's marijuana. They've been punishing players for years for this. But to me is, if this can help players relax, help their body, focus on gameplay, and they're playing and they're putting up the numbers. I mean, can you imagine? Look at Josh Gordon as an example. Take the games that we did get to see him play and the amazing games he had after suspension, Josh Gordon.
Yeah.
That dude said he would take 4 to 6 shots of liquor at home. He would sneak out the hotel, go home, do like 6 shots of liquor, smoke a couple blunts, come back ready for game time, and just go play football. And had some of the best games of his life. Now, I don't condone maybe doing the shots before the game, but to me, if that's what gets him in mind right and able to play, I don't see a problem with it. Marshawn Lynch used to keep a bottle of Hennessy in his locker and do a shot before the game, and he said it was just something to, you do, you get the burn, and it was just something he did that allowed him to go play the game and not think of nothing else.
People like to conceptualize that, these guys are role models and all that other kind of shit. The people that play football games are as normal as you and me and the other people that you go to work with. They are they are a microcosm of society. And so if you think that they're not smoking weed, screwing their old lady before they head out the door to go play a game, getting drunk on the sideline, doing something stupid, they might get fined, okay? Yeah. They might be kicked out of the league, but they're still human beings do dumb shit all the time, you know.
Good.
And
I mean,
people on a football field, people on a football teams are going to do dumb shit too. Look at Rashee Rice in the offseason. Okay?
Yeah.
Racing their cars. He ain't the only fucking NFL player that raced his car this offseason. He's the only one that got in a wreck or got caught. Okay?
Exactly.
You know,
I guarantee it.
So being all like, oh, well, my guys would never do that. Yeah, okay.
Hey, put it this way. My grandfather has a Corvette. He don't really do anything with his life. He'd rather work his whole life, and that's what he does. That's fine. So, it's usually my job to keep it washed, keep it waxed, make sure it gets driven, all the in and out things that he'll never do. Yeah. So, I'm not rich. I'm not on an NFL team. Have I raced it down 696? Fuck yes, I have. Should somebody call my mom and tell her what I've been doing? Like, come on.
I mean, as long as you were smoking blunts and had all your homies with you, I mean, it was probably okay.
It's kind of crazy. It's a different sport, but it's just a funny story, and this is real happens. Back in, I want to say 2012, or maybe a little bit, maybe 14, something like that. When the NHL started the Winter Classic, the Red Wings got I think the first game they got was in Chicago at Wrigley Field or White Sox Stadium, but it was in Chicago against the Blackhawks.
Sure.
Well, Chris Chelios, that played for the Red Wings and won three Stanley Cups, or at least 2 Stanley Cups with us, played with us. Well, he's from Chicago. He actually got traded before we won the Stanley Cup from the Hawks. So he wanted to play in that game regardless if he was playing for the Red Wings or not. So the head coach of the Red Wings told him he was going to be benched. Well, the GM said, no, you're going to play Chelios tonight. So they started Chelios, and Chelios knew that he was only going to be playing a shift. So he played his shift, got benched. He knew he was done for the night. Well, his kids are looking at him, and he's like, fuck the coach. He's an asshole type shit, but he calls his one son and goes, hey, do me a favor. Just keep bringing me beer. So his kid was just sliding him beer over the glass, and he was on the bench just getting hammered. And at the end of the game, there's a couple shifts left. The coach looked over him and goes, hey, Chelly, you want to take a couple shifts? He goes, nah. I was too drunk by then. So, should he got kicked out of the league? Here's a Hall of Famer, mind you, a Hall of Famer. That's won multiple Stanley Cups. That's won the Norris Trophy as the best defense player in the league. I believe he has a couple of those. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm just saying, just like you are. They're not holier than thou. You can look up to these guys if you want to, but they're just a dude like everybody else.
Okay? Exactly.
So
I'm sure we all looked up to our parents.
Football here. We talked about, people, getting contracts or, as far as all that is concerned. Have we mentioned the Chicago Bears were able to sign Caleb Williams and Roma Duze, okay, but prior to training camp. So they got that done. And that, we talked about Jordan Love, and he's holding in. And that means that we move on to the next story of teams that have players that are holding in, expected to be there, but not going to participate because they don't want to get fined. And there's 2 of them that play for Dallas. And it's CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons. No, neither one of these guys are probably going to participate in any training camp. They will be there, and I think that it's more likely that they get a deal done with CeeDee Lamb than it is with Micah Parsons, because Micah Parsons expects to be the highest paid defensive player in the NFL. And while he was spectacular his first couple of years, I didn't think he was all that great this last year, and I don't think he deserves to make more than Chris Jones defensively. What do you think?
I agree with you 100. CeeDee Lamb, pay the kid. Jerry just paid the kid. Stop being so damn greedy.
Got salary cap issues because they got to pay Dak Prescott. He's going to end up. I don't know whether or not he is going to do something, drastic to try to get, the contract extension that he's seeking to get even more money because all these other quarterbacks have surpassed him. Now he's ready, I need to be, being paid this. He had outstanding numbers last year. Really, he should have been the MVP of the NFL and not Lamar Jackson because of the numbers that he put up. And, I know that Lamar Jackson is a dynamic player, and I know that he can run with the football too. But, when it comes to carrying the load, they didn't really have a running game last year. The running game for Dallas was very, very poor. It was air it out pretty much the whole time in Dallas, whereas in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson, they had a pretty strong running game. The offensive line is not what it used to be in Dallas, and the strength of their defense helped them win several games when turnovers happened, both on the ground from their running backs or tip passes that ended up being intercepted. But, special teams wasn't very good for them last year either. And so Dallas has a lot of problems when it comes to contracts that need to get signed and need to get done. We've got some time here between the start of training camp, which will end this week, and the beginning of the NFL season. But I'm not sure that Micah Parsons is going to see the field come opening day. That's the main thing.
To me, Michael Parsons, he's too worried about talking too much on Twitter than playing football. I've seen a couple videos about his play where they break it down, and you can see one play when the ball's right there, he's trying his ass off. And then you see other plays where the ball's going the opposite way, away from him. He could put more effort and maybe catch the guy, but he's just jogging. To me, he started to take too many plays off. And, you don't get paid. If the kind of money you're asking, that's not how you get that kind of money. Maybe if Jerry's, dumb enough and makes it happen somehow with the cap situation. But, it would be a Jerry thing to do. But to me, I don't know. I hate Dallas as a team. Not gonna lie, but I will be honest. I feel bad for their fans because I feel like this team is ass backwards. I really do. Because you got Dak Prescott chirping that he needs more money. He should have won the MVP. He had a great year last year. But for how much times I've seen him choke in big games, playoffs, I'm sorry, you don't deserve more money until you put something on the table to show you deserve that money. Because you could be great regular season, but when it counts, it seems like it's just MIA.
Yeah, they got decimated by the first team that we're going to spotlight tonight, which is the Green Bay Packers. And so, you look here at the Green Bay Packers and what they've got. They did not do a whole hell of a lot in free agency. They re-signed some of their players. The big move that they made here in the offseason, they did one on offense, one on defense. Josh Jacobs comes in to replace Aaron Jones at running back, which in my opinion is kind of a wash. Neither player has been able to stay healthy. They're both really good running backs. Josh Jacobs is just a couple years younger than Aaron Jones, and the money was going to be about the same. So, just the youth, I guess, would be the upgrade here for Green Bay. A lot of offensive linemen departed here in this offseason. Bakhtiari hasn't been able to stay healthy for 3 or 4 years in a row. They bring in Andre Dillard from the Titans. But the big signing on the defensive side is Xavier McKinney comes over from the Giants. And so, that gives them a big boost at safety. And then their special teams, they got a new kicker and a new punter, Greg Joseph, Daniel Whelan. And then when you look at their losses, we talked about offensive lineman John Runyon. I think that's a big loss there. But when you look at their draft picks, they brought in, Andre Dillard. Well, now they get Jordan Morgan in the first round, offensive tackle out of Arizona. And so I think that they are stabilizing their offensive line. They continue to get young at a lot of their positions. They are one of the youngest teams in the league. And then when it comes to their linebacking core, they lost Devondre Campbell. They're going to replace him with Edgerrin Cooper, their second-round draft pick. And then, both their safeties, Owens left for Chicago. Rudy Ford is gone. And so they brought in McKinney, as we talked about before. But Javon Bullard from Alabama at safety in the second round, I think he's going to be, the replacement there. And so the rich kind of get richer because I think Green Bay is going to be a really good team this year, Chris.
Yes, Green Bay is definitely – I don't see him better than Detroit. And that's not me being a Lions fan or hating.
And you wouldn't, which is fine. Go ahead.
And but Green Bay is the team that we gotta keep an eye on in the division. I mean, Chicago could be
late in the year. They got you on Thanksgiving. Yeah.
So I mean, the Packers, I'm not taking lately by any means. I still think they're a couple years out from being a true contender, but they're a team that you don't want to mess with either. You don't want to take them lightly. They're definitely going to be fighting for the division.
They've got some tough games, They got Philadelphia. They open up in Brazil, and then they're going to go on the road to the Rams. They luckily get the 49ers in Green Bay, so that'll be a divisional playoff rematch.
And it's a November game.
That's going to be a great game. Okay.
And it's a November game, too. It's going to be cold. Yeah. It's going to be cold in Green Bay, so they're getting some benefits there.
Yeah. And so then, Green Bay has got to play against, of course, they're going to go on the road to Detroit. They got to go to Seattle, which we don't know what they're going to be, but at Jacksonville, I think, is definitely going to be a tough one. Now, they do get the Houston Texans in Green Bay, and that's in October, so the weather should still be okay and not too crazy. But overall, I think it's a solid schedule, not too hard, but definitely not soft. And I think that you can definitely expect them to be one of the top two teams in the NFC North.
Oh, for sure. And for sure, I think they for sure make a wild card.
And so, that's Green Bay. Let's move on to our next team, which is going to be, if I can get this all going here. Our next team that we're going to talk about, and we talked about them just briefly last week, and that's definitely why we're going to talk about them this week when we discussed the AFC North and Jacksonville. We're going to talk about the Tennessee Titans. And the Tennessee Titans, have a brand new head coach. They've got, of course, new offensive coordinator there. They're going to have they lost Derrick Henry, who was kind of the face of the franchise. He goes to Baltimore, but they reinforced the running game with Tony Pollard. They bring in Calvin Ridley to pair with DeAndre Hopkins. And so I think they overpaid for Ridley, but I think he's a good player. Some younger offensive linemen, and then the secondary. Holy shit, dude. Okay. They traded for L'Jarius Sneed. They bring in Chidobe Awuzie, Jamal Adams, who is a thumper. He's more of an in-the-box linebacker almost at safety from Seattle. Of course, Kenneth Murray Jr. comes in. So they've completely revamped their secondary. They drafted J.C. Latham, for offensive line, so getting young there. Here's the interesting one. Devondre Sweat out of Texas, the defensive tackle, I think he's definitely going to be a playmaker for them when they pair him with Simmons on the defensive line. He got in trouble by getting a DUI before the draft. And so a guy who a lot of people thought was first-round talent slipped to the second round, and Tennessee is the beneficiary here, Chris.
Oh, for sure. Tennessee, if there's going to be a dark horse in the AFC side of the league this year, it's going to be Tennessee. Because going from last year, they looked like they were a couple of years out from being a playoff team. Going to this year after this offseason, if these pieces click right off the bat, they have a shot at least a wild card, if not the division. Because we all seen how that division played out last year.
Yeah, it was crazy. With Houston and Jacksonville, Indianapolis was on the verge of, making the playoffs, and they had, Gardner Minshew at quarterback. Now they're going to have, Anthony Richardson coming back to be at quarterback, and so he's still going to be very raw. But, Tennessee, they bring in Mason Rudolph to back up, Will Levis, who I thought had a pretty decent rookie campaign. I thought that he showed flashes of what he can be if he gets time in the pocket, if he's got, some receivers that can get open. Hopkins was open a lot, but he just didn't have time to get him the ball. Now they're going to have some better time for him back there. They're going to run a faster-paced offense because you got the guy coming over from Cincinnati. That's the style that they play there in Cincinnati. Burrow gets rid of the ball a lot faster than some of the other guys because, they're worried about protecting him. And so, with the offense getting better here, I expect the offensive line getting better here. I expect the offense to be much improved. The secondary, with the defense that they already had, the linebackers and the defensive front, adding Sweat to that defensive front is going to be great. Now, they could use some pass rush, but now that they've got a secondary that can hold it down, maybe that defensive front could get to the quarterbacks a little bit better rather than, you got guys running wide open in the secondary and the other team is getting the ball out quick. And
exactly. Secondary helps out. I mean, look at Lions. The year before, that was our biggest problem on defense was we couldn't get a pass rush. It didn't. We would have to send all-out blitzes to get a sack because our secondary was not good enough to give our D-line time. Look what you do when you put a D secondary. Last year, our D-line got quite a few sacks on not blitzes. Hutcherson was a whole different player all season long. It wasn't a couple good games here. He gets taken out of these games by being doubled or triple teamed. You know what I mean? It was a whole different system. And that's what Tennessee definitely did for themselves. They gave themselves a great shot to be able to have the D-line being back to where it was. Because just a couple years ago, if I'm not mistaken, they did have the number one D-line in the league just a few years ago.
Yeah, you take a look at their schedule here, and they've got a little bit of a rough schedule. They got to play Green Bay, but it's in Tennessee. Okay, it's going to be in Nashville, but they got to go to Buffalo. They got to go to Detroit. They got to go to the Chargers, which I think is going to be a improved team under Harbaugh. Of course, they're, in division going to Houston, got to play Jacksonville twice. Cincinnati comes to Tennessee, and these two teams do not like each other. Cincinnati knocked Tennessee out of the playoffs a couple years ago when they were the number one seed, and, Cincinnati ended up going to the Super Bowl, when that happened. And so, I just think that they've got themselves a bit of a tough schedule, and there'll be some growing pains early in the year, new offense, new defense, a lot of new players on both sides of the ball. But, and I don't think it's going to open with an easy one, because they're going to Chicago, whose defense I expect to be every bit as good as last year. Now, their offense may not, get off the ground early, under the rookie Caleb Williams, but I expect that they will run the football a lot in that early game to get him comfortable. But then they turn around, they come home, they play the Jets. You don't know what the Jets are going to give you. Will Aaron Rodgers be healthy, or will he take a dive early in the season like last year? And then, they're at home, they play Green Bay. I expect that to be, like a win. They got to go on the road to Miami. Miami is not going to have a good defense this year. They'll have an extra day, going in there on a Monday on the road. I like Tennessee in that particular game. I don't think Indianapolis is going to be great this year. I think Indianapolis is the fourth team in the division. I think Tennessee could get wins there, wins against New England, wins against Minnesota and at Washington. And so I think they will be a much improved team. Not saying they're going to make the playoffs, but if they don't, they'll be right on the edge of doing so.
Agreed.
And so we move on. And we'll go to the NFC side of things. Our next team in the spotlight will be the New Orleans Saints. We talked a little bit about them last week after we discussed the Atlanta Falcons. And, I think that this is a team that's kind of got an identity crisis. They were Sean Payton's team. They had Drew Brees all those years. And, it's moved over to now you've got Derek Carr. And he has been a fringe quarterback between being a playoff quarterback and kind of being a second-tier guy. And they've had a decent running game, but their wide receivers have been injured often. And they finally get rid of Michael Thomas this year. He has been a burden to the team for at least 3 or 4 years. They paid him all that money, and it hurt their salary cap situation. And then, Slant Boy didn't play more than a few games each year because of either an ankle or a toe or a problem of some sort. And so I feel like this is the first year you're going to really see a reboot of the New Orleans Saints. Okay. They got a new offensive coordinator who's going to run a different system than they had last year, which was the Sean Payton system under, the offensive coordinator Carmichael, who had been there with Sean Payton. So new offense. They bring in James Robinson at running back. Kellen Mond will be the backup quarterback because they lost Jameson Winston, who has gone to Cleveland. Eno Benjamin's out the door. James Robinson, as I said, they added Cedric Wilson Jr., who is a good slot receiver. Equanimous St. Brown. Their offensive line, they had to do some different things. They lost Andres Pete because they couldn't afford to pay him or Cameron Irving. And then this week, the news is that Ryan Ramczyk is probably out for the season. They knew he had a knee injury at the end of last year. They were hoping that it would heal without surgery, but it looks like his career might even be over. And so the offensive line is going to be a little bit shaky. Now they improved their defense. They bring in Willie Gay from the Chiefs. Khaleke Hudson at linebacker and Will Harris at safety. But there's a lot of familiar names that have been jettisoned this offseason. Lynn Bowden, Jimmy Graham, who returned to New Orleans for his swan song, basically. Andres Pete, Cameron Irving, Malcolm Roach, Ty Summers, Lonnie Johnson Jr., and Marcus May. But in the draft, luckily, they drafted Talise Fuega, offensive lineman, out of Oregon State. Okay. And they get Kool-Aid McKinstry at corner, in the second round. And so I think they got them 2 starters in the draft. They did what they could with what limited salary cap room they have. And, I think that we can expect a decent season out of the Saints. I think they'll be on the fringe of making the wild card.
Yeah. I think the Saints could have they need to have. I would like to see Derek Carr. I like him as a person and as a player. I would like to see him have a better year this year. And I'm curious to see the new look, to see how they look this year. Because I definitely agree with you. This is going to be a rebuke. I think we could see different play calls, different offense. So I'm curious to see how good they look this season.
Well, they can lean on their defense. Of course, the defense is still run by head coach Dennis Allen. Okay. The offense may be new, but the defense has got stud defensive players. They've got the Honey Badger. They've got Cameron Jordan, at pass rusher, Demario Davis. They've got some really good players on the defensive side of the ball. And when you take a look at their schedule, of course, they're playing in the NFC South, so they're going to have to deal with new-look Atlanta. But they do not have an easy schedule, Chris. They're playing the NFC East, and they're playing the AFC West. And that is bad news, Well, actually, they're not playing they're playing the NFC, the AFC West. They got to go to Kansas City. They got to go to Dallas. They'll be playing Philadelphia and Denver at home, but they got to go, they got to go to Green Bay on Monday night. And so, it just doesn't look real good for them out of division. And in division, Tampa won the division last year. Atlanta has improved. Carolina's the only team that they could legitimately say they could go ahead and mark W's on. But the rest of these, man, these are some tough games that they got to play this year.
Well,
they got to play Cleveland. They're playing the Rams. I think the Saints might have. Looking at this schedule again, boy, they might have one of the toughest schedules in the NFL. When you play the NFC East and the AFC West, okay, let's see here. They're going to the Chargers, to the Chiefs, to Dallas, okay. They're going to the Giants, to Green Bay, and then at home they get Vegas and Denver. They get Philadelphia and Washington.
Cleveland, Atlanta.
Yeah, Cleveland is at home. That's like having the extra home game. But they get Cleveland. Man, that's a tough schedule. If they need to make the playoffs to save Dennis Allen's job, but if they don't make the playoffs, I wouldn't be surprised based on this schedule. Man, it's a tough one.
If he has a decent, solid year with this schedule, I think his job's safe. If they just miss the playoffs, I don't think he gets fired. But if they miss the playoffs by a large margin, he gone.
Yeah, that's for sure. So now we'll go back to the AFC and our next AFC team, and our final team that we're going to spotlight this week is a team that I expect to rebound in a big way, because they're going to have their quarterback back after he was injured last year. It's the Cincinnati Bengals.
Fuck the Bengals.
Yeah, well, the Cincinnati Bengals, I think they made a mistake. The one thing that I'm sure that they made a mistake doing, and that is letting Joe Mixon, they traded him to the Houston Texans. Okay, they bring in Zach Moss to be his replacement. Now they got Chase Brown, and they got a lot of faith in him because he did a lot of good things offensively last year. But Zach Moss is not Joe Mixon. They lost Tyler Boyd, but they drafted, Jermaine Burton, coming in. And so, of course, you got T. Higgins is playing on the franchise tag, and Jamar Chase wants a new contract. He's not going to get one this year. They're going to wait till next offseason, and then they're going to have to deal with both their top two wide receivers wanting big-time contracts. And so I think that this year here, let's be honest, I think this year is like they got to go for broke here. And that's why they brought in Trent Brown, at offensive tackle, even though they drafted Amarius Mims. They got Orlando Brown Jr. last year, and then defensively, Sheldon Rankins. They draft Chris Jenkins, and then in the safety, they bring back Von Bell, who was gone for a year. And then, Geno Stone comes in. He is a big-time playmaker. He's their big defensive acquisition this year. Mike Gesicki is a really good tight end. And so with the exception of the backup quarterback in Logan Woodside, who at best will be third because they've got Browning, who did an excellent job in Burrow's stead last year.
But I will say this.
The people they brought in free agent-wise that they added, they're all going to be starters.
And I just want to point this out. One of their big losses of Detroit is DJ Reader because he went to the Lions. But second-round draft pick right there, Chris Jenkins.
Yeah.
Will replace him like he never left.
Yeah.
Mark my words.
Yeah. Well, him and Sheldon Rankins will be the starting defensive tackles up front in the 4-3 scheme they'll run this year in Cincinnati.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you got Tyler Boyd, leaves, tight end Herb Smith Jr. went to the Chiefs. You got Jonah Williams walks as offensive tackle, but they bring in Brown and Mims. Just looking at this in general, I think that any weak spots that they felt they had when they lost certain people, they made up for by either drafting somebody or bringing them in free agency. And they're probably younger and cheaper.
Well,
the only one that I think is a mistake is they should have kept Joe Mixon, because Mixon, according to the Moving the Chains show on NFL Sirius XM Satellite Radio, Pat Kerwin and Jim Miller, shout out, Joe Mixon has had the best 3 years of his career the last 3 years. And he is a receiver out of the backfield, not just a runner, between the tackles, and a dynamic overall player. And
I agree. I actually agree with you.
The fact
because
Houston is crazy.
Because I wasn't a Joe Mixon fan because I drafted him when he first went to Cincinnati in fantasy football, and I got screwed. And I remember I drove a truck and I was training drivers at the time. So my training was driving, and when we're crossing into Ohio, Cincinnati from Kentucky, I don't know if anybody really knows this, but when you're going across the bridge, crossing the Ohio River to get into Cincinnati, if you look down to your right is the Cincinnati Bengal practice field. So as we crossed in, I happened to look down to my right, and there were all the Bengals out there practicing, and Joe Mixon was standing on the sideline. And I could see him clear as day, so I started yelling. I yelled at him, "You better get me 20 points this week, or I'm benching you." It was just a funny little story. But here's the deal. You might see as a mistake. The show might be right that this was his 3 best years, but I think the Cincinnati Bengals are smart. Because here's the thing, in this last season, Joe Mixon was in 2 police cases. One for pulling a gun out on somebody with a bike or something, and then another supposedly domestic violence. Got lucky enough that there was not enough evidence on him for either case, and they both got dropped and went away. So did the Bengals make a mistake, or did the Bengals say, that was 2 close calls, we're just going to send you away because we don't want no off-the-field distractions? Now, mind you, he was not guilty, so I'm not going to sit there and say he did any of those things, but they were legit articles and real news sources and things that did really take place for a couple weeks until the charges and everything got dropped.
Well, let me tell you this part, okay? The thing that I'm looking at, we just talked about the New Orleans Saints and their schedule. So the NFC South plays against the AFC West and the NFC East. Guess which AFC division plays those same 2 divisions? The AFC North. So look at this schedule, okay? Cincinnati on the road at Kansas City. Of course, in division at Cleveland and at Baltimore, but at the Chargers, at Dallas, at Pittsburgh, okay? Then on the road or playing at home, they get Philadelphia Eagles. They get Baltimore and Cleveland, okay? They get, they get these teams that are in this division, these 2 divisions here that are going to eat them alive. This team here, because of the division they're in, obviously the AFC North is so much stronger than the NFC South, in my opinion. Maybe this is the toughest schedule in football.
To me, AFC North and NFC North are the 2 hardest division. I mean, well, with NFC East, you can't say you can't leave the East out of there. But between those 3 divisions, to me, physically, are the hardest divisions to win.
Well, I mean, we're going to find out this year, but I'm just looking at here and I'm like, man, this is a tough schedule for Cincinnati. I think they're going to be in the thick of it. But I think that the AFC North, they're going to cannibalize each other. They're going to beat each other up. Cincinnati will get victories against Cleveland and Baltimore and Pittsburgh, but every one of those teams is going to get a victory against them too. So the winner of the division will be lucky to be, will be lucky. 4-2, of the 6 games that they play in division. Otherwise they're all going to be 3-3 and be crazy. And so, I just think that that's a fun division to look at, and we've already seen Pittsburgh. Now we look here at Cincinnati. Next week, join us for another edition, hopefully on Sunday night instead of Monday, although I'm not opposed to Monday, to do the Sunday night spectacular. We're going to talk the Detroit Lions. We're going to talk about what the Detroit Lions did. Okay? We're going to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs and what they did. Kansas City Chiefs. And we'll do one more AFC team and one more NFC team. So tune in for those. Thank you all. Another short and sweet, wonderful week here. Do you got anything else you want to add?
No, it was a great show. I'm sorry it was a makeup show. We're going to try to. I plan to do it Sunday myself. Unexpected things came up Sunday, and then how you supposed to tell the family you ain't staying for the barbecue? You know, so
Hey, you can't miss that barbecue. We like to eat now. Got to get that barbecue in.
I always love to eat. So, but everything worked out great.
Joining us. If you have any questions, comments, about things happening in the league, and you want our opinions, put it in the comments section. We'll get to it at the next week's game or the next week's broadcast. But we'll do 4 more teams going into next week. Any news and notes around the league, contract signings, injuries, which are bound to happen. Mark my word, something will happen maybe tomorrow or the next day. These guys haven't been going full speed in a while. We'll have some hamstrings and ACLs and stingers, and well, they better bring somebody else in or they're not going to get to the Super Bowl, type of injuries. And, we'll be sure to tell you all about them on the next broadcast coming up this Sunday, 7 Central, 8 Eastern, NFL Renegades, 4th and Goal Sports, podcast, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter/X.
Actually, I do not think we're on Twitter anymore because every time I try, only why we're not on Twitter is because it keeps popping up telling me I have to pay and become a member of Twitter to stream live on Twitter. So Elon Musk can just shove it.
He's got enough money making spaceships and Teslas.
Exactly. Facebook's been good to us, YouTube and Twitch. So that's where you can follow us. Thank you guys for joining us on a Monday. I know it's a Monday. It's a work. Well, I mean, Sunday night's still work night, but usually Sunday nights everybody's chilling and relaxing. So for the people that caught us tonight, we appreciate you. And we'll see you Sunday, 8 o'clock Eastern, like David said, when we talk about his shitty Chiefs and how they're not three-peating and how Taylor Swift's going to break the heart of his tight end, and his tight end is just going to run away from the league after he gets dumped this season. Nah, I just kid. I just had to give my boy Jason some shit. So I see him doing this thing.
Okay. All right.
Good show, David. Be good. We'll talk. And everybody, thank you guys. Have a good night. We'll see you guys next week.